everyone, every single person that feeds from the sun. Selfish people are so see-through, they just add to the fire of the evil. Radio frequency identifications, chip in your skin is the next equation. Mark of the beast, war on the streets, prepare for the ride, better hold on to your seats. What lies ahead, man, I don't even wanna know. Sometimes I wish I didn't know what I know. Anglo-American oil companies, neoconservatives take over the Middle East. Fake wars to make money, they drop the towers. Fake 9/11 through reptilian powers. Illuminati, I say it in every song till you learn what it is and you know what's going on. If you don't care about what I am telling you, you are just ignorant, there is no helping you. This is not news, people like me been saying it. Some get the message but no one's relaying it. No one's relaying it, no one's relaying it.
And I think the whole business with Iraq is a terribly sour comedy, abstracted down to its smallest motives. But finally there was no real, what there was there was the sense that Iraq had to be invaded because it was the first step in going toward American empire.
The idea is if you want to have real leverage or control in the future global economy, if you can sit back and control the tap for natural gas mostly and oil secondly, but very importantly, that will give you
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dave Hooper, and we are live on Down the Rabbit Hole. And I'm out of breath because I sped like another 100 miles an hour to get here on time today.
Congratulations, you beat me here today.
How you doing? I know, first time ever. How you doing, Howard?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, man?
Good. How you doing, Eric?
I'm doing good. Just got off work, so I'm great, actually.
All right. That song we hear at the beginning of each episode is a song called Pay Attention by a band called Split Personality. And at the very end of it, you hear a regular guy talking as if he's doing a news broadcast. For what it's worth, that's Gore Vidal. And if you don't know who that is, you should check him out. Not the hair guy.
That's right? Vidal Sassoon.
Thank you. And in fact, he coined a phrase that I kind of like. He says, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm a conspiracy analyst. So, sort of interesting. Anyhow, let's see. Today, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about the emotions and how to deal with waking up, the pitfalls, maybe some advice. We're going to share some stories. If we have time, we'll have some call-ins. Today's agenda. Like I said, we're going to share some stories. I think most of you guys know that my eyes started opening up when I stumbled across 9/11. We're going to talk about a little bit of advice, how you might handle the people around you as your eyes are starting to open and some of them are still dismissive. Maybe we can vent a little bit about some of the emotions and the hardships that having your eyes open brings into your life. It's not an easy road, but I firmly believe that there's a massive payoff at the end, and we've addressed that on a lot of prior shows, but we may recap that a little bit. So this, I think, is our seventh show so far. This is the first one where we're actually saying call in, and it's the first show I've actually even in the most minuscule way promoted. So I actually think
You did. You promoted the shit out of it. That scare you, dude?
What?
Did that scare you?
Did it scare? Well,
No, I just, when I said that, you looked over at me.
Oh,
I made you jump.
No, I see. What scared me was actually promoting it because I'm like, someone, people. I promoted it to my Facebook circles.
This is the seventh show, by the way.
Is it?
No.
Okay.
Plus your 2 outings on Next Up, which I don't have yet. So actually, it's your 9th.
I was more of a guest on those shows,
exactly.
though.
This is the 7th episode of Down the Rabbit Hole.
Normally, I've done a lot of radio interviews where I'm the interviewee, not the interviewer. Way different ball game because you don't need to prep for anything. And, if I stop talking, the pressure's on you, not me. But here it's a little different. So I'm still learning this medium and still, frankly, testing it. Like I said, this is a one sense medium. It's just audio. There's no visual, no smell, no anything. Thank God.
Well, unless you're in here with us.
It does.
And it
smell.
stinks in here.
I know, and Good thing, because I literally took ugly and smelly pills today, and I probably OD'd on them, and I had so much coffee that I'm sweating like I'm diffusing a bomb over here. So for the call-ins, I do want to give a disclaimer. I'm open to hearing stories and intellectual discussion and sincere thoughts. I'm not looking for people that are just going to throw out names, or I don't, if you're just going to regurgitate something that we all hear on the mainstream news, this may not be the best show to call in. I don't want to sound like a jerk, but in the interest of time, we'll probably, if there's a call that goes that way, we'll cut it off, and I'm going to pre-apologize should that happen. So maybe that is a little unfair, but we still have a free press, and that means that we still can do things like this, like buy airtime and get on the air. And I can guarantee the mainstream media sure as hell keeps people from hearing the truth by blocking them or cutting them off. So, I sure as hell don't have a problem keeping people from hearing lies or cutting them off. So, and Howard will be here for the first hour with us. And in the last hour, I'm going to share some of the details that were happening in my life that weren't in my film. Even people in my closest circles aren't even aware of. These have been very private things until today. So I want you to remember one thing. It's not down the conventional hole. It is down the rabbit hole. And as always, don't believe me. Don't believe Howard. Do your own research, or better yet, prove us wrong. Prove me wrong, prove Howard wrong, because Howard and I don't always agree either, and that's actually, I think, a good thing. But I will say this, any sincere effort in either of those two endeavors, whether you're doing your own research or trying to prove that we're off on something, I have a pretty good feeling that would ultimately lead you to the truth if you continue pursuing it. So,
feel free to find a detail we missed. Then our mission will be accomplished because we've got you to look.
Yeah, and there's still you don't have enough time to vet information and to do research and come up with the exact date something was signed, or one show I called one of the JFK shooters. I referred to him as Mark Files. His name was actually James Files. Things of that nature. So. When you're doing a film, you go over it. I mean, Howard, you know, there's over it and over it and over and over it.
There's an entire department whose job it is to fact check.
But here, maybe it's a little more forgiving if there's a mistake. So we're always open to being corrected, and keep that.
Well, hey, we're just bringing topics up for discussion. We love audience participation.
So I'm going to get into the details of my story later, but most of you already know that. I literally stumbled accidentally across an innocent question about 9/11, and it was actually just about 5 years ago. It was in February of 2011. And at first I thought this was this search for truth. It was a physical thing. That is, like, I saw danger, and I did things like stock up on food and supplies and things of that nature. And as along those lines, I was also about saving our country and saving the Constitution and prosecuting the criminals behind what really happened on 9/11. And all of those endeavors are highly, highly noble, and they need to be pursued. And but understand that as this thing went on, for me it became a little bit more spiritual in nature, because I kind of use this. I use a lot of metaphors, all the time, and I hope I haven't used the tsunami metaphor. But like, if you're on a beach and you pick up on some shortwave radio that there's a tsunami coming, and no one else knows. It's a sunny day, you can't see, there's clouds. It's a beautiful day, everyone's having a good time. Some people might blow off the warning. Some people may just pack up their stuff and leave, and other people might go tap all the other beachgoers on the shoulder and say, hey, there's a tsunami coming. Of course, you might get yelled at because you've interrupted someone's great sunny day. But as you see them carried away by a flood 20 minutes later, I suppose you can say, I told you so, although that might not be so satisfying. So I guess the metaphor here is when I first found this massive problem with 9/11, I calculated this the danger of this quote-unquote incoming tsunami. And literally the more I researched and the more I researched, I realized how much more dangerous this actual tsunami is. And a lot of that is embodied in the fact that, for me, I came to realize that there really is a spiritual realm. And it's sort of like the wind. I mean, can you prove the wind exists? You can't see it. Can you prove the spiritual realm exists? You can't see it. But you can prove both exist, in my opinion. So even though, originally my focus was on, oh my gosh, they're going to literally shut down the internet in the country, and that means riots and food. And so I start talking about, well, you better get guns and you better get food and better get supplies and stock them up. It was a physical thing. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized, as I kept peeling layers of the onion and just discovering just new levels of what we're up against, it really started to shift to a spiritual, I guess, preparation for what's coming. And I'd probably say my focus today is 99% spiritual, 1% physical. Yes, I would say I would stock up on food and I would stock up on supplies, but that's not the emphasis anymore for me. That's all that does is would buy us some extra time to help figure a few things out. And anyone with half a brain knows this country is literally on the edge of a revolution. You might not know that by listening to Anderson Cooper. In fact, what's going on in Oregon might literally be the beginning of it. I mean, it's kind of scary, but our government is right now making preparations to confront its own citizens in a military style manner, which is kind of spooky. But there are a lot of people that have seen this. Certainly every militia group, believe me, they don't exist for the sport of, staying in some military frame of mind. Understand what really drives these guys. They're not trying to overthrow a democratic or republic our government. They are essentially, they're the watchmen. They have essentially assigned themselves the duty of possibly, if need be, representing the people, because our government stopped doing that some time ago, and it's been getting worse and worse. And a lot of you see it and you feel it. I'm sure I talk to a lot of you. And last thing I'll say before I want to actually hear Howard's story is, the truth, it's not going to find you, all right? It's not going to – you got to go out and look for it, and you've got to earn it, and you're not going to get it by reading or by listening to the 6 o'clock news. It's just not going to happen. And it's also not an easy road, but we're going to talk about some of the light that's at the end of the tunnel. And light, I'm putting in quotation marks because that's got several layers of meaning, if you ask me. But think of like a stock graph where it's got peaks and valleys. The general trend is upwards, i.e. towards the truth. But I don't know if there's necessarily some plateau that we can reach as humans, literally. But it's I think it's when you decide to go on that route, that for me is the courageous, that is the noble thing to do. And you're going to hear in a little bit why that's important for the outcome of our country and certainly for your soul, if you ask me. So, Howard, would you consider yourself a conspiracy theorist?
No.
What would you tell me what is your story? I don't even know if I really know your story.
No, I mean, you know a lot about it. My story basically started with my involvement with AGD. The original.
That's anatomy that you're talking
Oh,
about.
that's our short way of saying the anatomy of a great deception. You run out of breath with some of the titles we come up with.
I know we're going to shorten those up, man. Don't worry.
So AGD is that's the pet name of the anatomy of a great deception in our inner circle. So I was, happily asleep and just kind of worried about who was going to win American Idol that year. And I got a phone call from the original video editor, Ian McPherson.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys were having trouble with a graphic artist you hired over the internet, which I don't know why anybody would hire a graphic artist over the internet or buy their printing at a place like vistaprint.com. When there are plenty of local guys around here who need work and support the economy that you live in.
Yeah, there's a great print shop I know of that, and doesn't matter where you are in the world, literally it's the best one I've ever come across. It's called inkonpaperprinting.com. Look them up.
Oh, it's too bad we're not on television. They could see me blush when you say that. But I was just having a normal day at work, and Ian and I had been talking about some stuff on the side. I was going to do some work for his video company, going to help him design a logo and a few things. And it was a super busy day, and under normal circumstances, I probably would have pressed the button and sent it to voicemail. And something just told me to answer the phone. And so I answered the phone, and Ian explained to me what was going on, that you guys were behind. Your graphic artist was turning in stuff that was off concept and behind deadline, and you needed to get, there was a meeting, and you were like, okay, so does anybody here know a graphic artist? And, Ian piped up, and Ian's thing was, well, I have a friend who's a graphic artist, and, I don't know if he can do exactly what we need, but I guarantee you whatever he says he can do, he will deliver on. And so you're like, hey, get him on the phone. So we ended up on the phone. Fast forward, within 48 hours, you hired me. And we were sending back concepts. I drove out to Grosse Ile, and we worked on, we must have worked for 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, did you have doubts? What was your opinion of 9/11 before we met?
9/11, the anatomy of a great deception for the first 3 weeks was a paycheck. It was just a paycheck. You guys, and Ian's a good guy. You seem like a nice dude. I had no interest in, I don't believe that, I never believed, because I always have had a bug about JFK. It's never added up to me. But I watched the second plane hit the tower on television when 9/11 happened. I watched these things happen, and I just never thought to question it. And when they're telling me, what's going on, and it didn't add up. It doesn't make sense. I remember when the second building, when we watched the first building fall, I remember thinking to myself, wow, is there a more crowded area in the country than Manhattan? And there's just building on top of building on top of building, and the roads are narrow, and I'm just like, wow, that thing fell straight down. What a stroke of luck.
What was your when you first heard that you were going to be working on a conspiracy, quote unquote, a conspiracy movie? Did you have any reactions to it?
No, it made me think of my good friend Keith Stark, who has believed in a lot of these things long before I did. I even mocked him for believing in these things.
I used to do the same.
He would be the brunt of jokes, because he would try and bring the stuff up to us, and we're all cool in a metal band, and drinking, smoking cigarettes, drinking Jack Daniels. Oh yeah, right, dude. Whatever. Aliens, right? Yeah, gotta go, man. And so we totally used to mock him for that stuff. And I thought of him. I'm like, Keith will get a snicker out of this if he sees my name on this film. And, it was strictly work. And in the beginning, because we were so far behind, all I could do was focus on work. And then I started giving you proof of concept for covers. And you had mentioned in passing, you brought up the movie. And something about, well, remember that scene, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, no, I haven't actually seen the movie. I've only been working here a few weeks. And you're like, well, you've worked here 3 weeks and you haven't seen the movie? Well, no, dude, I haven't had time. You got me working. What do you want me to do, And your order at that time, your directive was like, okay, here's the deal. Tomorrow, I want you to watch the movie. I'm not going to accept another proof of concept, and I'm not going to give you changes or approval on anything
I do remember telling
until you tell me you have watched this movie.
That's pretty funny.
You know, I need to make sure you're good with this if you're going to be a part of it, you know. And I'm like, all right. It was a Saturday night. We finished our production meeting, and I drove home. So Sunday morning, I wake up, morning coffee, wife and kid are asleep. I grab my laptop. I go to the what was a private channel at the time where you had it up on YouTube, and I watched the Motor City Casino version of The Anatomy of a Great Deception. And about within the first 20 minutes, my jaw's just on the table.
I think that's pretty much how everybody felt. I know I saw it at the premiere. And, you know, I had met you, the week before, I think?
Yeah, I was on your show. That's how we met.
You came on Hot and Easy, and then you were on Freedom Works, and I just remember sitting there, and my jaw hit the ground. I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. So, good job. I know that.
And for me, as I'm watching the movie, by the time I was halfway through, I mean, I think that version was 99 minutes. And so probably about 45, 50 minutes in, I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about, because there were always things in my mind that didn't make sense to me. But I never bothered because I would get distracted by whatever was going on in my life. I would never go out and look for it. I mean, you know, I'm trying to find out what guitars are on sale, where I can get the best deal on some tubes. And if there's a new Seven Dust record coming out, these are the important things. Well, and what deals on Amazon, and these were the important things in my life at that point.
Yeah, and you're trusting the people on television
I'm just living my life. I'm
right.
raising a kid. I'm having a great time with my wife. I got some buddies. We're hanging out, you know. And I that Sunday morning, my life changed, because it's like, wow. And my aunt, who I'm very close to, she's a PhD, and she's a PhD in biology. She's one of the smartest people I know, and that says a lot if you know my circle of friends. I remember talking to her, and I called her up because I was really excited for the first time. And I told her, I said, I got this job, I'm working on a movie, independent film, and she's like, that sounds awesome. And she's like, what's it about? And I'm like, well, you know, it's about... It's 9/11 is the backdrop for the story of this guy's life. And I lost her. And she's like, look, I am so happy you got this job. That's great. We will support you. We will come to we'll come to the premiere. We'll tell everybody about it. But we're not going to have this discussion. And I'm like, all right, whatever. That's cool, you know. And I'm like, but I really think you're going to like this. I really think this is going to appeal to you. I don't want to talk about it. I love you, honey. Have a nice day. All right. And ironically, I'm going to fast forward to the premiere, because my family, of course, attended the premiere. They came out to support me and to see our film. And my aunt, on the way out, my aunt, who would hear nothing of any of the conspiracy theories, didn't want to hear any of this kind of stuff. She hugged me on the way out. She's like, wow, you guys did a really great job. We're going to have to talk about this because your film appeals to people with logical minds that just won't buy the crap. The shit's too deep on 9/11 to buy it. They have crossed a line that sane, intelligent people will not. You can't buy it. It's just unbelievable. And for even her, God bless her, Canton soccer mom, completely oblivious to real life as much as I love her, if she's walking out going, yeah, that film made me think about a lot of things.
Where is she today? Like mentally, where is she today? She's back. We've lost her. She's back to raising 2 Yorkies and a couple grandchildren. Unfortunately, I don't get to have those kind of conversations with her, but she definitely is more receptive when I want to talk to her about these type of events now. Gotcha. What about you, Eric? What went through your mind as were you
I was pissed.
All right.
Because I remember where I was, and I remember that shit happening, and I remember seeing the film, and I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This could have really happened. This is real. Where did all this shit, where did the lava come from? Where did this come from? And I'm kind of, getting teary-eyed or whatever, because I just remember being fucking pissed.
You are kind of getting teary-eyed.
Yeah, I don't know why.
This guy loves his country, by the way. Want me to talk now?
Yeah.
Okay. It's refreshing to see a...
Hey, there's a lot of emotion involved in this, man, because, the thing is we've been asked, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, we have been told, trust in the government. Trust in your country. If you are just devoted to your country...
Yeah, I actually have a call real quick.
Okay.
All right. Hello? Hi.
Hello, who's this?
This is Dave, with whom do I have the pleasure of speaking?
Hey, what's happening, Dave? It's Jimmy.
Jimmy.
Yeah, from Tune In Tuesdays, the host,
Oh, hey, Jimmy. How's it going, man?
There you go.
Good, man. How you guys doing, man?
Good. I mean, it could
Good.
be 70 degrees warmer, but
Yeah, exactly.
play
That would be lovely.
We'll play the hand we were dealt. So,
First, I want to thank you guys for keeping it up, man, and just keeping up the good word about what's going on with 9/11. A lot of people would have given up probably the following day, like a lot of people have done, and you guys just keep it going. And that's a darn good thing for us.
well, it's
To make people aware.
it may be our, we're not alone. Thank you very much. We're not
Yeah.
alone here. There are millions of people out there basically banging the drum saying, wake up. I mean, Rage, you play Rage Against the Machine, Eric. And, who's the machine in Rage Against the Machine? The machine's the same. We're talking about the exact same thing. And,
Right.
it's not just that band, but when they're screaming "Wake up," you can feel the emotion in Zach De La Rocha's, voice. He's like, "Will you please wake the F up?"
Oh yeah, and when you're in
Yeah.
when you're in your 30s and 40s, by the time you realize this stuff is going on, and you've spent your entire life just buying the stuff they're shoveling down your throat, and you finally realize that there's something else going on, you are pissed. And what I want to do is I want to tell everybody how pissed
That's
off
exactly
I am.
how I felt.
Oh, I'm with you. And
But it's funny, though, because the first thing we have to do is convince people that we're not nuts. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then if they see the movie and they start to be involved with it, a lot of people are saying, wow, I can't believe this really went down in front of me like it did. And then it's almost like you feel dumb that they pulled it off. You know what I'm saying? It's like that. It's kind of like what I kind of felt. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they would do something like this in a sense to our own citizens. And then you turn around and you're telling us about these planes and these buildings that just magically fell to the ground, and how can these things physically happen? And we're looking at it and we're believing it, but physically, and even from the A&E guys, they'll tell you it's just the buildings couldn't drop like that. There's just no way with the timing and all that, and especially with a lot of people, they don't even know about Building 7. It was hit, or it wasn't even hit by a plane, and it dropped.
right, there were buildings between the buildings that fell and Building 7 that didn't fall,
Right.
yet Building 7 went down.
Yeah, so you just referenced the A&E guys. They were when. What Jimmy means by that is
The architects and engineers. Yeah, we're doing the little briefs again here, like we did
Yeah,
in the
right,
movie.
right.
architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, and I think the website is ae911truth.org. And that whole portion of this movement was started by Richard Gage, who to me is like an American hero. That is what a
Absolutely.
real patriot
Yes.
looked. And he was doing it back when no one wanted to hear this. No,
Oh, yeah.
people were, they'd literally scream at him while he's walking down the streets or when he's trying to engage people in conversation. And the amount of guts that took, that is what a 21st century soldier looks like. And
Right.
it's a lot easier
Right,
now because he's cut a path, and, AE 9/11. They absolutely influenced me, and they're not because they're activists, but they're scientists and they are
Right.
architects, they're engineers that one after another is like, this is impossible. A building can't have a progressive collapse through itself. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, you're right. I mean, I've played with Legos before. You can't, if I take the top 10 rows off of a 100-story Lego mock-up building, it's not going to crash through itself and turn the Legos to dust.
Or throw, build a 4-foot Lego tower and throw a tennis ball at it. What's it going to do? It's going to fall over into millions of pieces all over your room.
Right.
And you're going to be pissed because you're going to step on one of them things and whatever. But that's the whole thing, And then for it to fall, the molten lava, all that other stuff. There's too many things that variables that you didn't know on 9/11. You didn't know 4 or 5 years later.
Right.
It took 6, 7, 8 years for that stuff to come out. It was out. But we didn't have the people like Richard Gage and yourself and all that to put it out there. Now we do, and people are pissed.
Do you think we'll ever have someone come to trial on this? Do you think we'll ever get like that?
No.
Nope.
These two buried? Yeah.
It's like the Kennedy assassination.
So sadly, we're just talking in a circle.
Well,
no, we're making people aware.
Yeah, the whole idea behind this is that once you find the one conspiracy that you cannot deny is other than something you've been told, is that it makes you more receptive when you look at the other things that are going on around you that are also unbelievable. And what we're trying to get people to do is to just question the establishment.
Right.
This stuff, if it doesn't make sense, then find out what does. We've got resources out there now that our fathers and grandfathers never had. So we're just saying question the establishment. We're not trying to give you the absolute answers. We're just trying to tell you we think this stinks. This is what we've found. Please engage us. We long for participation. We started a peer group that's now grown to dozens of people that we interact with on this kind of stuff. And we're just hoping that it's going to turn from a group into a mob, and then from a mob into something else, and then maybe it's a movement, and then we're all, out there just finding the truth. And the more you spread the truth, we got to take this country back.
Yeah. I think a lot of people really do now understand what happened that day because of stuff that has been going on for so long. Like I said, even I started to believe that this story was a little bit off probably about 6 months after it. So that's 2001, right there. And then you would get your loose change movies, obviously architects and engineers, and videos upon videos now on internet. I will also say that I often make people aware of the whole Mossad thing, which has a lot to do with it. A lot of people don't like to talk about that because it is a bit confusing. It has a lot to do with the CIA and Israel. So they'll often look over that, but I would say really look deep into that. I've often shared that with you, David, before, and I've often come to some very wild conclusions about who was involved that day, who had dual nationalities over in Israel and also in the United States, and you'll be quite amazed that 50% of the Pentagon guys that were sitting there that day had dual citizenship, so they were looking pretty good that day when stuff kind of hit and they went to war. So, once again, it's something you got to learn. On your own.
All right. I'm going to make a few comments, Jimmy. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, man, I got to get going here. Actually, I'm about to do a gig tonight. I got my birthday going on, so I'm going to let you do all the comments. Is that all right?
Happy birthday, Jimmy.
All right, Jimmy.
All right.
Take care,
my
buddy.
brothers. You guys take care. Keep up the good work, and look forward to the next movie.
Thanks for calling in, man.
Take care. Yeah, so he brought up Israel, and I'm actually glad he did because, God, there's so many fine lines in this inside of the search for 9/11 truth, and I see a lot of people that, and I had considered this too, so I think it's natural that you go there, but that Israel did it. It's their fault. And here again, I'm not going to go into how or why this worked, but Israel was not behind 9/11. Any more than Al-Qaeda was. Were there certain Israelis involved? Yes. Were there members of Al-Qaeda involved? Yes. Were there members of our own government involved? Absolutely. Same with Pakistani ISI. We could go on and on. And yes, Mossad was involved as well. But don't confuse that with them being the brainchild and the executors of this plan. You have to start to understand this is the same. It's the secret cabal that we have talked about on many shows, and now they've been referred to as, everything from the New World Order to the 1% to the Bible even refers to them as the synagogue of Satan. I mean, these are the hyper powerful people that are truly in charge of our government. These are the powers behind the scenes. And when Calvin Coolidge says something like, the world is run by very different people than the populace would believe, or the mayor of New York, Highland, what's his name, he said, the true rulers rule from behind the scenes and we don't know who they are. This is who they're referring to. This is who I think Rage Against the Machine. This is the machine. They don't have a flag. Their allegiance isn't to a nationality or to a border. It was very hard to conceptualize how this war manifests itself, how it because we're so used to seeing, two armies facing each other, June 6th, 6/6 at 6 o'clock in the morning, the American, Canadian, and British troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, and we've got our guns against their guns, and that's how we're trained to think that all war happens. But
up until that point, that's the way all war happened.
Well, we've been in a spiritual war, which has very different dynamics.
Agreed.
Very hard to understand as well. But to finish the Israel thing, I'd be very careful with blaming Israel. And I also see some people inside of the 9/11 Truth movement blaming, the Jews, or you might hear the term Zionist at times. Now, in that case, like the Zionist Jews, that would be the synagogue of Satan. That is, some people call them the Illuminati, the New World Order, the Hidden Hand. They've got it like the devil himself. He's got many different names and categories, and they practice the mystery religions. And one of the things I've discovered, because 9/11 was the first domino that fell for me. But I didn't stop just at 9/11. I continued looking. I went back through history, and I reviewed everything from all the wars of this century, the JFK shooting. And let's talk about JFK for a quick second, because that one's famous and normally gets people interested, although it is in some senses a tired subject. But that was the death of our president. Let's just understand this. And many people listening were alive when that happened. And there will never be a trial. No one's going to be brought to justice on JFK. And my personal sentiment is that someone will probably not be brought to justice on 9/11, or I should say the correct people. But I wouldn't rule that possibility out. If the whole country woke up tomorrow, we would get 9/11 justice. But the ratio of enlightened people to what I call sheep is the disparity is just too great still. So the reason I brought up JFK is because I'd use that analogy of an open-minded investigator a few shows ago. And just to do a quick recap, if you're a detective in some small town and there's a really weird murder and the murder victim was painted in clown paint, and you just studied that one event, and let's say you were closed-minded, only studied that one event, and that's it, you wouldn't know of other murders where someone was painted in clown paint. You may solve it, you may not. But let's say you opened up your eyes and you started looking around a little bit and you started noticing that, holy cow, there's a string of these murders where the victim is painted in clown paint. And you do all this research and you find out that the murder always happens the day after some traveling circus was in town. you're now starting to see patterns of the crime. It makes it a lot easier to solve, makes it a lot easier to identify who might be behind it. So you can even get to the point where if you know the circus is going to, some new city next week, you may even get to the point where you can predict what's going to happen. And I'm saying that to everyone here, hint, hint, wink, wink, that there is a bigger picture at play here. I do not want to diminish anything about the movement for 9/11 Truth, because that is where my heart resides. And if it weren't for people like Richard Gage, I would never have woken up to this. But let's understand that the reason I brought up JFK is because the very same people that killed JFK are the very same people that did 9/11. And one of the patterns I found in these types of events that seem to mark our history, they get people arguing over, no, the CIA killed JFK. No, it was the Cubans. No, it was the mafia. No, it was the Russians. It was the communists, for instance. And there's a little bit of truth to all of them. And what I found is one of the patterns that these guys use when they're pulling off these events is, for instance, there were several shooter teams at JFK. There were 2 shooter teams that were essentially the rejects from Operation Mongoose, which was the Bay of Pigs invasion. There was a communist shooter team, there was a CIA shooter team, and there was 2 mafia shooter teams. Everyone has plausible deniability, and that's Joe Pesci in the movie JFK. He's like, even the shooters don't know who killed. There's a grain of truth in that as well. Although, for my personal satisfaction, I do believe James Files, who was interviewed by Jim Mars, who spent 40 years researching JFK, I do believe he is the one that pulled the trigger on the headshot. He's in prison for another crime. And that's a fascinating interview. And if you have an interest in learning about that, I'd do it. So I told you a little bit about, what I discovered inside of JFK, which had elements of the CIA and even the FBI and elements of other nations, crime syndicates, etc. We flash forward to 9/11, and here again we've got similar scenario where, yes, you're right, some Israelis were involved. Yes, you're right, some quote-unquote Al-Qaeda folks were involved. All these crimes seem to, there's always the face of evil. And it's never the guy who did it, because Lee Harvey Oswald, I'm sorry.
There's just no way.
He did not kill. In fact, he may have been the lone hero in the whole story. Osama bin Laden. In fact, funny thing is Lee Harvey Oswald actually worked for the CIA, and it seems that he was actually an informant to J. Edgar Hoover at the FBI, who was actually trying to stop the coming execution of JFK. Same thing happens with 9/11. Osama bin Laden, who, do your research, he worked for the CIA for the better part of his life. These guys that, were once agents then become the face of, the crime of, the decade for, that particular decade. So, yes, was the mafia involved in JFK? Yeah. But did they do it? Did they plan it? Could they have? No, they didn't have the power or the resources to do it. Was Israel involved in 9/11? Yes. But did they have the power to really get our own military to step aside, to let Al-Qaeda do their thing? Come on. I would say if that's where you are right now, you have peeled several layers of the onion, but don't stop peeling, because you're not at the core yet. And we're only talking about the core of the 9/11 onion. And then once you go beyond that, you start to see, again, patterns of the crime. And these guys use the same playbook over and over and over again. And there's always, for instance, there's always drills that are going on. There were drills going on at Sandy Hook. There were, FEMA was already at ground zero on a drill. the day that Reagan was shot, and I do fully believe it was intended that he was supposed to be killed so that Bush could ascend to power. They were running, and the reason I believe this is because that day they were running a drill on what would happen if the president were shot. And you can see the same way our little killer clown metaphor. When you start to see the patterns of their crime, it gets to be much easier to identify who's really behind this. And if I believed Israel had anything to do with the killing of JFK, I might be saying, okay, let's put the spotlight on them. But I would not get caught up on the rungs that I think are there to confuse us a little bit, which is to bring in disparate groups, certain parties with different quote-unquote national allegiances. But what we don't know is that behind the scenes, they share a higher purpose, a higher agenda, the esoteric agenda, the hidden agenda. It's kind of like how Jesse Ventura used to talk about what's really going on in the world. And believe me, anyone that talks about what really goes on in the world, your immediate impression is going to be, oh, they're wacko. Charlie Sheen, wacko. Rosie O'Donnell, wacko. Jesse Ventura, wacko. But there's a reason that thought comes to your mind. And if it just did, when I just said that, if you rolled your eyes about Jesse Ventura, understand that you are brainwashed to a certain degree still, even if you're enlightened about 9/11. And you need to understand how much power the mainstream media has to form these thoughts. It's the same mainstream media that tells us that 19 guys from Saudi Arabia did this. It's also the same mainstream media that gets folks like my favorite listener from last week, and I say this very sincerely, Uncle Mike, where he has a preformed idea of the Bible before he's looked into it.
Right.
Because there again, it has been, in a sense, subliminally programmed into our conscience. And we don't even realize that it's happening. And we form opinions before we've done our own research. And that, here again, it's like what Adolf Hitler said, let me control the school books and I'll control the population. You bet your ass you can.
Yeah, you think they weren't paying attention?
Without a doubt.
You think they didn't watch what the Nazis pulled off and go, if we just don't gas a few million people, that's a great way to get what we want.
It's not that this evil power was paying attention to what the Nazis did. They were the ones behind the Nazis.
Right.
I mean,
I understand.
They were, and I've already talked plenty about. If you ever want to look for the power source, Deep Throat said it in the movie All the President's Men. Follow the money. Just follow the money, and right on our own money. You see the evil, demonic symbols that are all over it. That's not an accident, folks. That eye is not the eye of God with a big G on our $1 bill. That's the eye of another God, small g. And some people refer to him as, the deceiver of the whole world. Another little hint for you guys. So just because you might find someone that's associated with Israel or Mossad that was involved in this, I would not stop there, because there may be more veils of truth to get beyond in order to get at the core. And you may still be carrying a few grains of disinformation unknowingly. And how long do we have before?
4 minutes.
Okay. So that is my analysis between JFK and I would suggest, for me, 9/11 is the best place to start. Everyone saw it. It happened at the very beginning of the internet age. It was videotaped and documented by thousands of different people at that moment. And believe it or not, witness testimony on the spot, the minute something happens, is much, much more credible than waiting. And especially when you understand how susceptible the human mind is to inference and to suggestion. And then you start to see some of the other, one of the patterns that you'll find in all of these crimes is witness intimidation. Whether it's JFK or, RFK, that was one of what I don't believe is a coincidence anymore. Do you remember I told you about RFK and Betsy?
Yes.
I don't think I told the listeners. So I'm trying to wake Betsy up to 9/11. It's not really happening yet. The movie's not really made. This is somewhere in, 2012, let's say. And I'm the type of guy that walks around always quoting movies just for the fun of it. And we're walking out of the Drake Hotel in Chicago. I have a leather jacket on, and I had just seen the movie Midnight Run with Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin.
Great movie, by the way.
I love it. I mean,
Great.
there's I watched the movie like 50 times. I could recite every line. And as we were walking out, I don't even know why it was on my mind. I opened up my collar and I quoted a line from the movie, which is, Serrano has the discs. Serrano has the discs. And then De Niro screams out, Serrano has the discs. And I scream this out, and Betsy's looking at me like, dude, what are you doing? And I'm like, it's a line from a movie. And we laughed and went about our day. We drive back from Chicago that weekend, and she comes to me and she's like, all right, Dave, I'm willing to listen to something. I'm willing to hear about a conspiracy. I'm willing to think about something. Look into it. And I'm like, well, let me ask you, what's interesting to you? And she's like, I've always been fascinated with the Kennedys. I'm like, okay. And I had not at this point looked into JFK or RFK or anything like that.
Other than your own suspicions, I'm sure.
By now, I was starting to associate the fact, I went from thinking 9/11 is the king of all conspiracies to starting to realize it may be one of many, but I had not looked into JFK or RFK. So I pulled up, I'm like, okay, RFK, and I typed in RFK into YouTube, and I just, hit send. And up came, 20 results or so. And I didn't choose it. I just asked Betsy, I'm like, you tell me. You pick one that looks interesting to you. And she happened to choose, I don't even remember what it was called, but it was something about RFK. And we start listening. And it was literally, it was like the clouds parted. We're about 10 minutes into the documentary. I myself hadn't seen it. And it's, just like 9/11, just like JFK, the actual witness testimony of what happened at RFK's shooting, we all think Sirhan fired the shots and killed him. But actually, look into the couple, the lady in the polka dot dress. I mean, everyone kept saying there's a lady. I'm telling you, we picked it up at about 10 minutes. There was a CIA agent that was recorded questioning one of the witnesses at the RFK shooting. Now, this witness's name, I believe her first name was Vicky. Her last name was Serrano. And at that moment, I got a bunch of goosebumps because I'm like, because by now, I was starting to get a little spiritual and see something. And, Serrano has the discs, what's on discs information. Serrano has the information. And I put that on Betsy's radar screen unknowingly. And we start watching this documentary, and Betsy's jaw is on the ground, not because I'd done the line to the movie, but because of what she heard the CIA agent interrogator and the way that he was interrogating this witness, last name Serrano, what he was treating her as. It's the same way in the movie JFK, where the agents are like, you did not hear 7 shots, you heard 3 shots, and if you say anything different, your life's going to get turned upside down. And you see this interview progress between the agent and Serrano. And at the beginning, she's absolutely certain that there was a couple and the lady of the couple had a pink polka dot dress. They were either the shooters or shooters along with the rest of, along with Sirhan. And at the beginning of the interview, she's like, I'm telling you, you need to be looking for this couple.
I pulled it up right now. Lonnie Elworthy said he saw Sirhan during the evening in the ambassador room standing next to a woman. He thought they were together. The woman wore a polka dot dress in the embassy ballroom. Locke said the woman seemed out of place and expressionless in the midst of the celebrations of RFK's primary victory. He said the woman wore a white dress with blue polka dots.
Yep.
And there was also a woman wearing a polka dot scarf. And there's probably 30 people here that are giving different things, and they're all like, check out the woman in the polka dot dress.
Yeah, it's sitting there emotionless. That there's the results of MK Ultra programming. It's a very real and ugly program, and you should understand a little bit about it. My point is the reason Betsy's jaw was on the ground wasn't because of the Serrano correlation. It's because what she was witnessing, that our own government official was doing to this witness. And you could see over the span of this interview, which lasted for hours, they wore this witness down, this Serrano witness, to the point where she was finally saying, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it was that one guy, Sirhan, whatever. Maybe that's who did. I don't even remember anymore. And this was my point, which is witness testimony on the spot, even though the media tells us differently. It's the initial testimony that carries much.
Right, because it's fresh in your mind. You just watched it happen. And you're still going to get people who get things wrong. You still have people who, but when you interview 50 people and 45 are saying chick in a polka dot dress.
Right.
There's probably a chick in a polka dot dress somewhere. And call me crazy.
Why did CNN reporter, and I forgot his name, who was at the Pentagon on the morning of 9/11. I mean, the first thing he said is there's been an incident at the Pentagon, and he actually goes out of his way. And I remember, even though the media helps sell these events, it's not like they're in on it. It's not like they,
right?
It's not like they were in the
planning room. They weren't.
They didn't know.
Next to the dude going, "Hey, dude, we're going to do this."
But this announcer, and again, because it's the age of DVRs and recorded information, and it had really just begun with the internet. These guys can't hide like they did for as long as they did with JFK. But the CNN announcer, first thing he said was, I'm not sure what happened at the Pentagon, but whatever it was, it certainly wasn't an airplane.
Right.
And now that was removed, obviously, off of CNN. You can't go find that anymore,
right.
But it does exist on YouTube. But you know what? You got to go, again, the truth is not going to find you. You've got to go looking for it. And most people don't realize when we think of the Pentagon, we think of that fallen roof, that part of the building that had collapsed. Let's understand that collapse happened not when the quote unquote plane or missile or whatever it was supposedly hit the building. It happened 30 minutes or so later when there was an additional explosion that many people inside the Pentagon believe was the result of some pre-planted bombs, which certainly coincides with how the Twin Towers came down, which was I am not excluding some other theories, but were those buildings wired to come down via a controlled demolition? Absolutely. And if you don't see that, if you have looked at the documentaries and you can't figure that out, or you can't quote unquote get your arms around it, you need to get out of the way of people that are trying to learn the truth, because you're just going to slow us down. That's just so obvious that it's almost laughable. And I notice also here again, if you understand the same pattern of the crime in the same way they confuse us, I've noticed inside the 9/11 movement, for instance, that there's a lot of sometimes infighting. There are some people that have adopted the idea that some sort of low-yield nuclear weapons were used. There are others that talk about how some sort of sonic weapon was used, and I've seen us waste a lot of time arguing over this. When at the end of the day, what I do suspect that the people that say that there was evidence of nuclear explosions, I don't discount that. I didn't look heavily down that road because I could prove that it was wired for a controlled demolition. So at that point, I know there's a serious crime here. And it's, I've used this analogy before. I'm going to give two quick ones, and then we're going to take a break. If your family gets T-boned by a drunk driver, does it really matter would you want the investigation held up so that we could figure out whether he was drinking rum or vodka? Would it really matter? Does it really matter at the end of the day, if some exotic weapon was used in addition to controlled demolition? If my loved one dies, I'd like to find out at the end. I'd like to find out if a pistol was used or if it was a rifle. But I'm not going to slow down this investigation. I'm not going to put my life on hold, put this investigation on hold until we solve this, this little particular corner of the crime. I'm interested in who did it and why, because those are the two important questions. In fact, it was, again, in JFK. And Oliver Stone, I totally understand how artists try and they're trying to talk to us. And when he has Mr. X say, you know, the who and the why is what's important, but they confuse people about the how, so they're all running around, you know, like a bunch of blind mice trying to figure it out. And basically you're falling into the deceptive trap that this evil cabal sets up when they pull one of these things off. And all I would suggest to my truth-seeking brethren out there is focus more on the who did it and why. Get to the bottom of that. That is the important question. The hows, they will solve themselves over time. And if you find someone slowing you down and insisting that it was done one particular way over another, you may just have run across one type of disinformation agent, and we will talk about them a little bit in the second hour. Anything you guys want to add before we take a break?
I'm good.
Hey, everybody, we're back. Our crack board operator. I'm laughing because I'm like, do you want to introduce this next segment or do you want me to? And he's like, no, you could. So while we were talking, and I love this, Eric over here pulled up the that CNN report. So why don't we listen to that?
There you go.
This is the one at the Pentagon.
How much of the plane actually impacted the building?
You know, it might have appeared that way, but from my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual side of the building that's crashed in, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, a fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around, which would indicate that the entire plane crashed into the side of the Pentagon and then caused the side to collapse. Now, even though if you look at the pictures of the Pentagon, you see that the floors have all collapsed. That didn't happen immediately.
Thank you, Eric.
You are welcome.
And that's the kind of information you can go find
anywhere.
It
took me 30 seconds to find it on YouTube.
If you're waiting for Anderson Cooper to play that again for you, that will never happen. If that's what I mean, the truth is not going to find you, and if you're putting your faith in what the television tells you, how it tells you to think, you're, I think, setting yourself up for personal disaster, and it's got our nation on the edge of disaster, and we need to turn off our television sets. They're actually even more dangerous than that.
Read a damn book.
There are, myself, I always liked documentaries to begin with.
We got a caller.
All right, who do we have?
I don't know. Who? Oh, turn your radio down. Who's this?
I did. This is Elizabeth. I'm David's friend in New Jersey.
Hi, Elizabeth. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I have a couple of quick comments. The first hour was terrific.
Oh, thanks.
I really appreciate the work you're doing. I hope this goes long, long, long. I just wanted to address a few of the things you said. One is about Al-Qaeda and 19 hijackers. There were no 19 hijackers, and there's no such thing as Al-Qaeda. If you want more specifics about that, Al-Qaeda means the base.
Yeah, actually,
you may have heard that.
Al-Qaeda.
The database.
It was a database, exactly.
Who were collected to be mujahideen to fight against Russia in Afghanistan.
No, that's a great point.
That's who they are. So when I listened to Truthist, and I even told this to a couple of the lawyers at the last 9/11 group meeting in New York City, I said, once you talk about hijackers, it kind of discounts everything else you have to say, because there's a lot of evidence that these people, 7 of them were still alive after 2001, and a few of them, one was dead before that. Their identities were stolen, and we don't know if we're pretty sure that they weren't on the plane if they were still alive afterwards.
Wonderful point, and you are absolutely right about that.
The second thing, you can talk more about it off the air. I just wanted to make my points real quick and not hold you. The second thing is you were talking about if there would ever be a new investigation or whether there would ever be, put the real criminals on trial for this atrocity. And one of the things we're doing in New Jersey, we have a group called NJ 9/11 Aware, and we are trying to, on behalf of New Jersey, who had more than 600 victims in the towers on 9/11, and 17 out of our 21 counties had victims. We thought we could get more interest in people in New Jersey fighting as much as people in New York. However, one of the things we're doing is we're trying to get a new investigation by talking to our assembly people, Congress people in Washington, and prosecutors all across the state, especially in the New York, New Jersey area and the tri-state area, in order to get that. And the other thing that's going on simultaneously is the famous 28 pages that were redacted and stifled by President Bush. They mention they looked into this was the very first investigation done by the senator in Florida, and Graham. And what he did, what they did in the first investigation was they looked into who funded this, because certainly no one's going to be able to stand down NORAD and everybody else on the East Coast and hijack 4 airplanes and not be attacked from the anti-missiles on the Pentagon. So, it had to be an inside job for that. So they said, well, where did they get their money from? And they looked into it, and every place where they were mentioned who did the funding and who, kicked in for this little job, it was redacted. Now, those 28 pages that were part of that investigation are available to our people in Congress. Unfortunately, they have to go in by themselves to this room in the basement, I think, of the House of the Capitol building, and they're not allowed to take notes. They're not allowed to take their phones with them or take pictures or anything. No recording devices. They have to read it and then they have to leave. They can't take pages with them or anything.
Yeah, and you expect some politician to have. You expect some politician to have enough courage to stand up and tell the truth. Most of those guys. Well,
believe it or not, there is a bill to release the 28 pages, and it's co-sponsored by both Democrats and Republicans. So there is a petition online to release the 28 pages. I think it's 28pages.org, and your listeners and the people they reach out to can certainly have their congressmen contacted to read the 28 pages. Again, there is a I can't think of his name right now. The Republican who initially sponsored the bill in with the Democrat. He's a very, very well-respected Republican, even by the peace movement and the left, because he's been very fair and impartial on these issues. So, these kinds of things, we really have a foot in the door with this, because if those 28 pages are released, Saudi Arabia is going to come into play, and as you know, they're our frenemy in the Middle East now, and they're carrying on, killing Yemen like right and left. 10 million children, I hear, are dead and wounded. So, these are our friends in the rest of the world. So, the 28 pages is just something very, very important to look into, to be released. And I can't think of the third thing I was going to say. Can you hold on a second? I check my notes. I'm just getting used to this phone where I can do 30 things at once.
Elizabeth, let me comment on some of the stuff you said, because you brought up a lot of great points. And I want you to keep listening. And if you want to talk more, I would say call back unless you want to wait on hold. I don't know how this board works, because this thing.
No, just if she wants to call, you can chat in the chat room with me, or you can message me or whatever if you got any other questions.
It's okay. The last thing I just wanted to say was whether there will be a trial. It's not, as you said, it's important to let people know, but I think once they know that 9/11 was a false flag, they will recognize the next one when it comes along, because they're in such big trouble right now. The powers that be, that they're going to try to pull something else, and it's important that we recognize that for what it is.
Absolutely true.
And I let you go. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for taking my call. Bye bye.
She brought up a great point, and I actually I spoke too soon because I think you asked, someone asked, do I think they're going to be brought to justice?
Yeah, it was the other caller.
Jimmy. Okay, so my opinion is probably not. However, that's just my personal opinion. I do recognize that there actually are several cases, and Elizabeth pointed out some architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth are behind some. Dr. Niels Harrit overseas in Europe, they're making headway as well. And I want to, I guess, correct myself because I'm no expert at that. There are a lot of people that are actually involved in the legal side of this, and I will say this: I will throw everything I can at it to bring these people to justice. But it's we're dealing with a hyper powerful force here, and it's more than this is much more powerful than some presidents. So I don't want to dissuade anyone from pursuing that route, because that is one of the things that could absolutely save our butts. But she brought up a good point, and I didn't really dwell on this in the movie too much, because there's a lot of things I learned about 9/11 that I did not put in The Anatomy of a Great Deception, which for me was it's designed, the movie was designed so that if you're already awake to 9/11, and I had the problem of trying to wake up my family, my friends, my wife, I couldn't, there was no video I could show, there was no report, there was no one place I could just say, all right, sit down and watch this and you'll get it. And that's what I made, was something that people that are already have their eyes opened and they're struggling to reach the people in their inner circles. That's who this film was really made for. It was made so that my friend, Mr. XYZ, who already understands 9/11 was a false flag, but he's quote unquote losing credibility in his own hometown or in his own private circles. This was something boiled down to 90 minutes. You can watch it anywhere. I mean, it's been viewed. I think we just crossed 25 million. We were at 24 million several weeks ago, or we're about to cross it. I should double check that before I throw that number out. But it's been viewed a lot, and I think a lot of the people that find it are people that found it because they were directed to it by someone that was already tuned in to what was going on with 9/11. But Elizabeth, you're absolutely right. There were not 19 hijackers on those planes. There's even credible, possible evidence that there's some debates, and again, I don't want to get too far into the how, but even inside the truth community, there is some debate about what actually, if anything, even hit the towers. But I am firmly, and to say believe, that's not really a strong enough word, but to say no is, I think, a little bit arrogant, as in KNOW. But there were several news agencies, including the BBC, that in the days after 9/11 started following up with the families of the 19 hijackers that were plastered all over our mainstream media. And a number of these news outlets actually discovered that the people that were blamed as the hijackers were actually alive, living their life. They don't even, some cases weren't even sure how their photograph got injected into the story. These were some of the things that were, for me, just jaw-dropping realities, because the level of deception, and that on some levels the sophistication of it, and on other levels just the brazenness of it, to just pull a photograph of some guy that lives in Saudi Arabia and blame him as a hijacker, and then several news reporters follow up with this guy and find out he's actually still alive. I mean, 9 of the 19 hijackers, it was documented that they were alive after 9/11. And the other point you made about Al-Qaeda, you're absolutely right. And actually Al-Qaeda, and I think, I don't know if it's in Farsi or what the language is, but it actually means it's a database. And it was a database of, in a sense, suspected terrorists, or let's maybe even say fall guys or patsies. Now, the interesting thing about our world and the way things work is that becomes in a sense, a self-fulfilling prophecy. I can't say for sure if there is today an organization that's called Al-Qaeda and they meet under the banner of Al-Qaeda and they plan terrorist attacks, but it sure as heck wouldn't surprise me. You know, our mainstream news is out there saying Al-Qaeda did it, and we use that as an excuse for a war in Iraq. Well, guess what we're probably going to incentivize is for a bunch of people that are in the Middle East that see our military heading over there under completely false pretenses. I see them organize. I can see how they would organize themselves. Now, they maybe don't call themselves Al-Qaeda, but we, in a sense, invented Al-Qaeda ourselves. And that's when you hear people talking about how the CIA created Al-Qaeda, this is, I believe, what they're referencing. So I'm with you on that. You should also look into Cleveland Airport and what the air traffic controllers had to say about the two flights that left. I think it was Boston Logan Airport. And our good old friends NASA, they were there that day in a warehouse or in one of the hangars. And I suspect all the original passengers that were on these flights, they were air traffic controllers that day. This was not in my movie either. Saw these passengers being escorted into this hangar, and I mean we don't know what happened to them. I don't really think any of them lived, but I think whatever it was it's shocking in some senses. But here again, I don't want to get too focused on the hows of they do this, but there are. You can understand it by studying it. It's like a big puzzle. We've all worked on jigsaw puzzles. And when you first dump out all the pieces, it's intimidating, one of those 1,000-piece puzzles. And it's really slow at first. I mean, first you got to find the edges. And then you start to pick up pieces and you're still flipping them over so that the right, the correct side's up. And it takes time for you to match up in general where on this puzzle cover the individual piece you're holding, roughly where it belongs. But as you keep working on the puzzle, you start to you get to the point where if you're in it long enough, you've become an expert at that puzzle. You can even identify almost instantaneously, oh, this puzzle piece goes up in the upper right-hand corner. That's part of the the mountainscape that's in the puzzle cover picture, whatever. It's the same thing for the search for truth. It can be very daunting and intimidating, and I think it is on purpose highly complex to get a lot of people to not look into it. There are some people that are motivated by putting stuff together, and I used to build model airplanes, and some of the instructions we get were just so difficult that it was hard to do it. But this was the kind of dad I had. He was like, basically, get your nose back in there and figure it out. This will do you good later. I didn't realize how much truth there was in that. And there's some people that just like to solve puzzles, and then there are others that, if you have to assemble some piece of furniture, the minute they see that there's more than 4 pages to the instructions, they're like, oh, I can't do this. I'm just going to hire someone else to do it. And I would definitely want to be in the former group. Certainly, if you're going to search for truth, it's probably, hopefully you've already got a curious mind and you like to solve things. And I will say this, you can peel all the layers of the onion. You can get down to the bottom of it. And for me, ultimately, and a lot of, everyone listening that's listened before knows where this ultimately took me is it led me to the proof that God is real. And even as I say that, I know a lot of people are rolling their eyes. And I remember even when I was making the movie, my own movie, I had to argue with some people even to get two simple quotes from the Bible in there, which were, these cryptic references to the father of lies, the deceiver of the whole world, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, etc. Those, of course, are ranks of fallen angels, which some of you know I've spent some time talking about earlier. I know this stuff is super complex, but there are incredible rewards for those that persevere until the end and figure it out. And as I was making it, we raised some money to make it, and in addition to that, we had also some private donors, and they were, some of them said, I'll give you money, but you have to make sure that you blame Israel. Things like that. That's a hypothetical example, but I'm just saying that using something that we talked about earlier. And we didn't accept money that had those kinds of strings or those conditions because even as I was making the movie, I was still myself in a search for, the last layer of the onion. And I think it was sometime during production when I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the behind the scenes, what was going on, as I started to uncover these things. And we're really going to talk about how to cope with it, do some advice on what you can do to help wake up the people that are in your life that you want to have at least look at this. And I'm, for better or for worse, I'm going to speak the truth as far as I know it, and I don't want to edit it or take away from it, even if what I'm saying could possibly hurt my credibility in some circles. At the end of the day, the truth is whatever it is. And all I've done from day one is I've just gone where the evidence took me. And I don't want to make the same mistake. We discussed this a few shows ago. The MUFON investigators, the guys that were looking into those. Now, these guys are already off on an incredible tangent because they're these psychiatrists and researchers and writers that had gotten together, and they're talking about abduction experiences. And so already, you're already in rare air at that point. But even amongst that group, it wasn't until they turned off the recording devices and went, quote unquote, off the record that one of the researchers broached something that he'd discovered. And what it was that he found that his patients that claimed to have this abduction experience, they were able to stop the abduction experience in its tracks by mentioning the name Jesus Christ. And this might be a little clue to how powerful the programming we get from television is. Because at the end of the day, that is where we get about 99% of our information. And these guys are already, they're already looking into aliens. But for them to go one step further and say, oh my gosh, this might have something to do with God and Jesus and the devil, that was too far. And they didn't want to. They actually, in a sense, by following their own human nature, they inadvertently were helping to suppress the full truth. And it wasn't until one of these guys had enough courage, albeit under the guise of turn off your recorders, I'm saying this off the record and I'll deny it if this goes nowhere, but he asked the group, have you guys ever, he basically says, Have any of your abduction patients or, the people you're seeing, have they ever mentioned about getting out of an abduction? And then another one kind of sheepishly adds, well, yeah, there is, I've come across something, and none of them put it in their work. By the end of this, I can't hear you, by the way. I don't know if you're...
I had the mic off.
By the end of, this little off-the-record conversation, it turned out that between them they had, and I might have the numbers wrong, but they had hundreds of instances between them where invoking the name of Jesus Christ ended the abduction experience right on the spot. But they wouldn't print that in their work because they didn't want to lose their credibility.
Right.
Now think about that. You're already investigating aliens. So for me,
credibility's already
well, based on what we were taught.
Right.
Yeah, I'd be thinking, okay, this guy's crazy level 9. Who cares if he goes to crazy level 10? I mean, it's just one more notch. But maybe you can understand, if the deceiver of the whole world, if the father of lies is a real entity and he's powerful and hyper intelligent and he's been at this plan for thousands of years, and we then follow the ownership of our mainstream media, which can be linked to 5 companies. And I've run companies before. All right, I've started several. I've probably employed cumulatively over 1,000 people in my life, and I can say something in a boardroom to one person, like my VP of operations, and I will see that manifest, and it will filter down to where my customer service people are echoing it, and I never had direct contact with them. So understand that the powers, again, behind our politicians and behind our government are the exact same powers that are behind our mainstream media. And it might be alarming to link up those individuals to people that literally praise Lucifer. And I know that sounds crazy, but this was one of the hardest things for me to understand. And I must have come across that 50 times before I finally even considered the possibility. Now I look at it as, if the deceiver of the whole world is a real entity, I guarantee you that long before any of us were born, he was already in control of the media. It's not like this got pulled off, in the last 30, 40 years. He was already in control of governments. And when you've got, some of the most important members of these Illuminati families, like the Rothschilds, for instance, they're one of the families that they're behind the banking powers of the world. This is the central bank. There's so much power, and we've discussed it before. I'm not going to get into it. You just run a printing press and pass out paper, and you can become a king overnight because all that paper you just passed out, they have to pay it back plus interest, which means if you understand economics, it's impossible, mathematically impossible for it to be paid back because there'll never be enough money in the money supply. And these very guys they're into the dark arts, the dark magic, into the mystery religions. These are, this is what I think another director that was trying to wake us up. Who's the guy that did 2001? Stanley Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick, yep.
The religion that you see the character of Tom Cruise stumble into, this mystery religion, and the Bible refers to it too, by the way, that it was going to ultimately cause the crumbling of the world, and that's what is going to bring on, the world's last chance, which is the one that everyone seems to discount before they get out of the starting gate, as did I, for 42 years plus, that that somehow the Son of God is, really came here to earth. I mean, that just made no sense. And you're telling me there's something out there called the devil or so, really? I mean, this is myth, obviously. But, that was for me one of the last layers of the onion. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about, how I actually got to that point. But I don't want that to dissuade anyone from for me, my heart starts with getting truth for 9/11.
You got another caller.
All right. Probably someone that's going to tell me how. All right. Hi, who do we have here?
Hey, Dave. This is Michael from Ann Arbor and from Facebook. We've touched base a couple times.
Does your last name start with a W, Michael?
Yes, it is. That's right.
I know who I'm talking to. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Hey, I just wanted to call in and just say, for the record, just so it's said, that Dave, you're doing an excellent job. You're doing a very, very good job. I totally get, why you started the show with a lot of, Bible beating. I think, there's probably some, like Uncle Mike, some other people pushing back a little bit, like, oh, what's this? I signed up to hear about aliens and JFK and all this. Why is he talking so much about the Bible? But I totally get that, and that message is going to continue to get broadcasted for sure. And just so anyone else out there, is not understanding the context and relevance of the Bible and how all of a sudden this guy Dave can turn around and turn into preaching in a sense. Dave's a smart man. He's a businessman. He's a shrewd man, and I say this with a big grin on my face. He's read the Bible where it says, to the manager who is produced, he was given 10, was given 10 more. To him, we'll give him 10,000. To the one who was given one and made nothing out of it, we're going to take stuff away from him. So he's understanding. Dave has done a lot of work, and he's gotten this truth. And by the way, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about truth. He's gotten this truth, and he's trying to leverage that into the maximum possible return to get that truth that he's received, and again, give that to as many people as he can. So I know we got to talk. I owe you a beer. We need to get
a beer. So.
But yeah, I just really appreciate what you're doing. You're doing a very, very good job. You're hitting the nail on the head on everything. I see a lot of people jump on the Israelis did it, or it was early on. I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, it was the Republicans?" It was Bush. Therefore, we're gonna vote for our Democrat guys. Yeah. Good luck. But it's absolutely right. It's not the labels. The labels are a false artifact
absolutely
that we can latch on to. And I want to say, even Dave, maybe this is directly to you. Even the sense, take this with a grain of salt. I know where you're coming from. It's kind of delicate, but even the Satanists, even the hyper elite people, that, and you may know this, be well aware, that is also a label. Ultimately, we are one, and that message is for all of us. So, with that, I just want to say thank you, and again, hope to talk more with you, because I think this is fascinating times we're living in. I think there's some really good financial revolutions on the future.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
But thank you very much, Michael, and reach out to me next week. We got to figure out a time to get together, and I totally appreciate it. Totally appreciate it. All right, man. Take care.
Great callers today.
Yeah, I'm actually psyched. And like I said, I think I put this out to like just a 40 of 3,000 and some people on my Facebook.
So Elizabeth messaged me and she says, Dave and I agree about everything except this God person. I'm willing to learn, but religion seriously being used to divide us. And I don't think she means you and her. I think she means everybody. And I agree. And I think that's the only difference that you and I have also. I mean, some of your stuff is a little out there, but I'm growing onto it. But that religion thing, man, it's just a hard one for me.
Dude, I'm sitting in the middle of this investigation. Let me tell you how I got here, because the step-by-step might make a little more sense.
And you got 8 minutes to do it.
I don't want to ever ever come across as some Bible preacher. Right. Now, when we hear the word Bible, now here again, I don't even know who's listening, but I guarantee you just had a message, you just had a vision in your head of some guy with straggly hair holding a sign on a street corner in New York, or at a football game with a 3:16, John 3:16 sign, and you're already discounting him before you've even listened to him, because that's what has been subliminally pumped into our head, that all of these guys are whack jobs. And that, even after I was fully aware of 9/11, that was still working on me. This programming was, and I didn't realize it. And the thing is, if you understand brainwashing, the whole object is that the brainwashed victim doesn't know they're brainwashed. And even as I was half awake, I was still brainwashed, thinking I was fully awake. And so I never want to come across, and this is why I always say, get your own information. And I'm never, you might also have this image of some guy in a pulpit, screaming, all you sinners and fornicators. And no, that's just, again, that's the mainstream media planting an image in your head through 1,000 television shows of that happening. And that's just not how it happens. It's just not real. The people that are involved in this, frankly, they're sincere, they're smart, they're educated, they're curious, and they're honest and maybe courageous. They're following what their heart and their eyes are telling them, in spite of the fact that there's a guy on television saying the exact opposite. But it's so hard to oppose that because, like in my hometown, I don't want to get out of order here, but 5 minutes. Michael, that's why I always say, get your own answers. And I would never say something like, oh my gosh, you must believe in God or you must believe in Jesus. That is a personal decision. And that's up to anyone. I'm sharing my story. Now, my story is, and I've actually lost friends. I've literally lost friends because I've voiced this. So I can absolutely understand the fear in voicing it. But for me, it's as true as the fact that 19 guys didn't do 9/11. So I'm not, at least I'm going to try not to shy away from it. And I don't want to ever compromise my message because I don't want to make the same mistake those MUFON investigators did, which is to, in a sense, help cover up the truth, even unwittingly, in any way, shape, or form. So I love my friends over at Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, but I know, Kelly, I know you're rolling your eyes right now and maybe going, oh my God, will you shut up, Dave? But I've been telling you for a long time it's part of the package that comes as me. So it's no surprise to you, that's for sure. So let's talk a little bit about dealing with the emotions and maybe some advice of how you can connect with people. And I'm not talking about starting to go talk about Jesus Christ. I mean that. Let's just get people awake to. Most people that are listening are tuned into some sort of something that they found, whether it's chemtrails or Sandy Hook or 9/11 or JFK. Like I said, we all probably have a conspiracy theory that we believe in. And if we could get all of us in one room and just start to write down on a big board, does anyone have one that they would bet their life on, that they are on to something? And we write it down and we write all these things down. What we would end up writing on that board is much closer to the truth of this world than you will ever find on mainstream media. And you get a room filled with 1,000 people, there's some in there that do believe aliens. There's some in there that believe Bigfoot. There's some in there that believe this or that. At the end of the day, we've spent some time talking about the Bible. Last week, I think we talked a little bit about the statistical and mathematical impossibility of the thousands of predictions that were in there, including the fact, and this is Elizabeth and I we have spoken before, and we agree on 99.9% of some of the most outlandish things that, that are really sort of irrelevant, but maybe we'll have them on a different show. I don't want to get into them today. Things that the regular population just not ready for, especially if you're just starting to open your eyes. And Elizabeth, maybe I'm kind of saying this to you a little bit, but I'm also saying this to everyone else. I guess you got to ask yourself, what do you put your faith in? Do you put your faith in what you hear out of a television screen and what some folks at NASA and what some other people have to say about the fact that what's up there might really be aliens, let's say? Or do you put your faith in, and by the way, that would come with having to accept the fact that you'd be putting your faith in some entities that are operating in secret, in the shadows, obviously deceiving us in some way? Or would you put your faith in an ancient document that was written by someone that's absolutely not constrained by the dimension of time? I mean, this guy can see and or manipulate the future, and I don't think aliens can do that. And I have yet to find something that is untrue, that is a lie in that book. And I guess you just pick, we all have to choose at one point, what do we put our faith into? And this is all that soon?
1 minute. I've been saying it for 5 minutes now.
God, time just flies. It's 6:56.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
By the way, shout out to the caller in the Netherlands, or the listener in the Netherlands.
That's probably Niels Harrod.
Niels.
Can you give me one more minute to go through a couple? Nah.
You got 1 minute.
All right. Some quick pieces of advice. If you can, find a partner to search for truth with. Do it with your wife, your girlfriend, your brother, your father, someone you care about. Do it together. The further you go off on your own, the harder it's going to, the more, I don't want to overuse the word alien, but the more alien you're going to appear to the people around you. We'll have to save that for later. I will do that we'll talk about that on the next show.
Right.
How to deal.
So let's put what do they call it? Put a pin in this show.
Let's put a pin in this. Let's cut it.
Cut it.
I'm going to wish everyone a good week. All my friends at ae911truth.org. I love you because you literally saved me and maybe thousands of others. Now you got to worry about yourselves, but again, I'm not going to preach to you. Everyone have a wonderful week. God bless. See you next Wednesday.